Alright guys, we got a Ford Focus. CV axle broke right off. See that? See how that axle is like covered up by that control arm? That's probably why it broke. Like, what's going on here? Motor mount's bad, hanging too low, something like that. I don't know. Gonna have to find out. Let's get this axle out first. Got the tire off, 19 millimeter. Lug nuts. See what size socket we got on here. We got 32 mil. Alright, 32 mil. We're gonna take this axle nut off and use our pointy air chisel bit to press that axle back in. It looks so rusty, I don't think it's gonna press it unless we put the air chisel on it. And up underneath here, there's a mount for the new axle. See right there, this covers the axle shaft. We got a couple of bolts we're gonna take off there. They look like 13 millimeter. After we get this off, we're gonna hammer on this tulip here and pop it out of the transmission there. Make sure you got an oil pan handy. I told you this motor looked like it was sagging. Look at that. Get a bolt snapped right off from the motor mount, right there. Looks like the other hole still has threads. Like the bolt wasn't even in or something. Alright, so looks like we got a motor mount to do, some bolts to extract. Fun, fun. Let's get to it. Alright, we got our motor mount fixed up. That old shaft, the half that was left in there, after taking this hold down bracket out, it just popped right out with one hammer blow. Back here by the bearing. Just popped it right out. Did leak some trans fluid, so have your bucket handy. Now we got to get this end of the axle through the hub, right? Well, you can't do that. So you got to either take your ball joint off or your strut or something so that you have enough room to pull this steering knuckle forward and fit that in and then bring it back and reattach your strut or whatever. I sprayed down the strut with some PB Blaster. So I'm gonna go ahead and loosen this bolt. Looks like a 15 mil. Take this little guy out of there and get this strut to come down. They're not always easy, but after this one doesn't look too rusty, I'm gonna loosen that bolt and hammer right here on the steering knuckle and get it to pop down. Or take my big crowbar on this control arm, try to get the whole steering knuckle to come down with the control arm. Strut is out of the steering knuckle. Bada boom. Get the wheels pretty much straight, a little to the left. And we're gonna line up the splines of this axle with the hub and then press the steering knuckle back into it. Line it up with the strut. Tricky part is usually getting the strut to go back in. I might use my hoist stand, put a little pressure on it, or a floor jack on the control arm to push it up in there. This one came out really easy, so hopefully it goes back in really easy. Here's my setup for getting the strut back in. Just using a hoist stand to put upward pressure on it to pop it back in. This strut wants to go in straight. So if you're cockeyed, it might not work well for you. And if you're really rusty on your steering knuckle or strut, clean it up a little bit, put a little extra PB Blaster in it, that way it can slide up in there a lot easier. You can use a floor jack. If you don't have a hoist, just use a floor jack. Get that pressure on there. It's just the easiest way to do it. I did this so quick, super simple. Oh yeah. Make sure your shaft is all the way seated. Make sure you get your bracket on tight. Tighten that bolt, 15 millimeter bolt back down on the strut. We got 199 foot-pounds on the axle nut. It's important to torque those correctly. That's for 05 to, I believe, 2011. If it's 2004 and lower, it's gonna be 233 foot-pounds. So we are ready to take this jack stand off. And I gotta put my brake hose back in its home. put the tire back on, top off the transmission fluid, and she's all done.